We are now reconvening for the CPC Annual Public Forum at 10:26. The introductions have already been read. There is a welcome, a forward, and an introduction by our chair, Ken Beaugrand, which we are going to run now.
Good morning and welcome everyone to the CPC Annual Public Forum. As you are aware, each year the Community Preservation Committee holds a public meeting to help create a better understanding of the issues that are before the community and where we are looking for applications to address the needs of the community in three specific areas, namely historic preservation, affordable housing, and open space and recreation. The way that our committee works is that we work on the basis of applications made to the committee on an annual basis, and we then work to review all the applications, take a look at the available funding, and make recommendations to the annual meeting with respect to the allocation of the funds that are generated by the CPC surcharge, as well as by the award from the state with respect to matching funds for CPC. There are lots of people willing to help you in terms of understanding the nature of the applications, as well as some examples from projects in the past that were approved by the CPC.
The speakers.
Okay, so that was it?
That was it.
Okay. We have guest speakers every year. These are people that have recipients of funding from the CPC. Some of these are long-standing projects that we continue to fund every year when they need it. The first speaker is Brian Sullivan. There.
And there's a mic.
Affordable housing.
There's a mic over here, Brian.
All right.
Hi, Linda. How are you? Thank you for having us. Did you send slides? Great. Yeah, come on up. I'm going to bring Tucker up as well. This is my first time here presenting. So we have some slides of a presentation that we put together for the finance department that kind of shows where we've been, where we are, and where we're heading with affordable housing here on the island. And we appreciate all the support that we've had over the years from the CPC. So thank you again for having us. If you want to tab through. Oh wait, you're controlling over here the slides. Okay. So some background on the trust and things that we've been working on. There's been significant funding since 2019 on the island, almost $70 million island through all different resources. We're going to talk about where some of the funding's been deployed, where people actually are, and then projects that are coming. Show where we were with the shy count and maintaining safe harbor for protection from unfavorable 40Bs in the island, and then looking forward some projects that we have slated in land that we own, and RFPs that are out the door, and some that are coming to go out the door. So if we can go ahead and move the slide forward. I'll just run through this as quickly as I can. SHI stands for Subsidized Housing Inventory. DHCD is the Department of Housing and Community Development in Boston. That is a regulatory board that covers a lot of stuff. It has had a recent name change.
Now the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities.
Safe harbor is a term referred to a community being able to object to unfriendly 40Bs if they're maintaining the right percentage of shy units in the community. And AMI is area median income, and that's done by the county, and we'll get to Nantucket's level shortly. So if we can go to the next slide. So on Nantucket, the AMI for a family of four is 136,100. As seen, you can look through the rest of the chart. The CPC funding helps us with projects for people that qualify at 100% AMI or lower. Shy qualified units are 80% AMI. And you can see a family of 4 here as an indicator is 94,150. If we some general information on 40B. The goal for most from the state for communities is 10% of the housing stock to be SHI qualified units, which I mentioned at 80% or lower, either through ownership or through rental. We can move on to the next slide. This is some past funding where we've seen through a variety of sources, including the CPC here in 2019. There was a $5 million bonding article from the CPC, an additional $750,000, 150 in 2021. Let's see, Article 32, 800,000 from CPC. And again, I think this past year was past bonding. Is that right?
Prior year.
Yeah, prior funding for prior years bonding. So that's some of the general funding the Affordable Housing Trust has seen over the last handful of years. If we move the slide forward. So projects that have we've been working through in recent years. 31 Fairgrounds is a project known as Wiggles Way. Hopefully many of you have seen that project. It's next door to the Fairgrounds restaurant as you're driving by. It is nearing completion for this early fall with occupancy not far after. This is a rental project of units, and the trust made a grant to Housing Nantucket for a portion of the funds and also deployed funds as a loan that will be paid back over a 50-year term for the project. Let's say, I need my glasses with magnifiers. $8.5 million worth of loans, which will get paid back to the community over time. Thank you. So we're looking forward to see those units occupied. Currently out right now, we have an RFP at 135, 137, 141 Orange Street for up to, I think, 32 units. So there have been a number of people who have registered for that. Towards the end of August, we'll be looking over the proposals. So that project is an exciting opportunity for more units in a walkable neighborhood on the bus route with nice access to municipal services, sewer, water, et cetera. And that unit count all falls within the allowable zoning. And that has been a goal of the trust for a period, while I've been on it and many others, is that we make an effort to try and work within existing zoning regulations. Vesper Lane is a project, is a piece of land over by the hospital behind the Coast Guard facility that the trust owns and is working in conjunction with the hospital they own a piece of property and we own a piece of property, and we're working to develop the two of them to capture for the Affordable Housing Trust another 14 units, and the hospital will be working on their own unit count. 12 Bartlett Road is a piece of property that the trust purchased. It is very close to the school, the intersection of Surfside and Bartlett Road. An RFP will be coming out of procurement hopefully in the next few months for the development of that for 12 additional units. We were also able to work with the Richmond group to maintain Safe Harbor and accelerate their projects for 24 and 48 units respectively. We did this with some grants and again loans to be paid back. White Street is a property in Surfside. It's a 3-acre property that the Bird family worked with the trust to very generously participate in what's referred to as a bargain sale, where they sold the property to the trust under market value and were able to take advantage of the tax code to complete the sale. So we'll be looking forward to developing an RFP there, hopefully for ownership of 6 units. Beachgrass Road was a habitat project we were able to fund, as well as Benjamin Drive, and it's been very advantageous for Habitat and Housing Nantucket to be able to come to the trust mid-cycle, where traditionally they would come to the CPC and have to wait through a town meeting funding, where the CPC has been funding the trust. For example, Habitat came to us, was it the last meeting, last month? And they had overruns at their Benjamin Drive project due to the high costs of construction and labor and everything else we're seeing here on Nantucket. And we were able to fund their deficit, which was advantageous for the completion of those projects. Somerset Road and 30 acres, 2 units.
Units that we were acquiring.
Oh, yeah.
So if I can just add a couple of comments on this page. So I think it's just important to stress that virtually every one of these projects listed here has CPC funds in them. And many of them would not have been possible to do without the CPC funds that you all have provided, particularly through the two $5 million bondings in recent years. So the first $5 million fully deployed, the second $5 million, we're about halfway through that as we stand here today.
If we could move to the next slide. Okay, so here we have some plan uses where we've allocated some funds to be moving out for the development, basically getting vertical on some of these projects. There's funds set aside for 6 Fairgrounds Road. Again, the construction and development of the 135-137 project. The previous numbers listed on the deployment were for land acquisitions, and these are looking at development expenses to help the projects come to fruition. So again, Vesper Lane, Amelia Drive, Sparks Ave, and White Street. So we can move on to the next one. This chart represents the shy list on Nantucket and the status it has maintained over the years. And while housing has always been a real issue, the community recognized in 2017 that a real financial commitment and effort needed to go into maintaining the shy list in Safe Harbor and getting us to the 10% requirement. So currently, the goal on Nantucket for 10% is 490 housing units, and that's from the old census. We are waiting for updated census information from 2020, which we don't have. There is some speculation that that number may go up. But you can see, since the community has been supporting the funding, we've been able to take strong action and significantly increase the number of units on the shy list. And with the projects we have planned, we believe we have a clear target to the existing 10% number. We don't know what it'll be in the future, but we're on the right path.
Yeah, we've gone, from basically just under 2% prior to 2017 to now 6.78%. And as Brian said, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. If we continue on the path we're on with the funding that has been provided to date, we can see reaching the current 490 goal within the next 3 years.
And I do want to clarify that 490, while it is a maintenance number to avoid 40B development, it is not our end-all goal. Our community has a housing crunch that we recognize is significantly greater than 490 units at all affordability levels, from 50 to 80 to 100 to 150 and even up to 240%. This year at town meeting, the body of the meeting did raise the limit that the Affordable Housing Trust can work with in attainable housing up to 240%. So we will continue to work on opportunities. Was that the last slide?
Yeah.
Yep, okay, great. With that, I guess I'll look for any questions or, oh, okay, thank you. So going forward, I mentioned the 10%. Currently, we are working to hire a consultant to put together a 9-person at-large committee to develop a buy-down program for year-round housing stock. This would be a deed restriction program, so hopefully we'll have that group created in the next 2 months and be able to come forward this winter to the community with some really strong deed restriction opportunities to capture more year-round housing and not be purchasing all the real estate, but just the restriction. The closing cost assistance program that has been in place has also CPC funding has been able to be deployed there. We've been able to help 75 year-round families in purchasing, and what that program is it is a up to $15,000 long-term loan that attaches to the house to be able to help people pay the fees associated with closing, and then if and when they sell the home, the money would then be recycled back into the program over time. So the more and more families that we can help, the more self-sustaining the program will become. And that program was really helpful in thank you, Sagem's Path, the project that you guys put together so many years ago.
Well, Linda was on the Affordable Housing Trust and really like spearheaded the initiation of
the
that
creation
program.
of this
Yeah.
program. So it's been incredibly supportive to people in our community. We can move on to the next slide. Yeah, let's find some more for some more people. Do you have questions?
Two questions. Where's the Sparks Avenue? What's the locus for Sparks Avenue?
Oh, well, that is a private development project that is being suggested for right over here, the former or the current Downing Lake location, et cetera. And the principle there is, we've reserved some funds. They're not committed yet, but we've reserved some funds under the desire that if it is going to be built, and that's a question mark, but if it's going to be built, we certainly would like to see it serving the year-round community.
Three questions. Real quick.
Yeah.
Surfside Crossing actually came off because of all the stage, et cetera, but what was that? The number.
That will add 39 to our count.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 0 Surfside Crossing units
Right
in the
now.
count right now.
Yeah, I know. And then this may be a pie in the sky notion, but I watch planning board meetings regularly and I see, like this Billy Cassidy subdivision, all these different things that are going to be coming online pretty quickly, especially if they do modulars. Is it possible to approach people like Billy? It's obviously very amenable, obviously, but developers like that and say, can you set aside, now that we have this attainable housing threshold, is it possible? I mean, of course it's possible. Have you thought about approaching these developers and saying, we are willing to set aside one unit for, I mean, I know a lot of them are set aside for employee housing, so there will be some affordability kind of built in or attainability. But just a thought, because I know like with Neighborhood First, we really wanted to be able to use existing housing. That's going to be, new, but still, it's just a thought. I just wondered if that's something.
So the answer is the thought is there, yeah. So the kind of the background and where we are at this point is developing really thoughtful deed restrictions so that we could work with the developer and purchase the restrictions on the specific units to then make sure that they're captured at either a certain AMI and year-round occupied. And so because Neighborhood First was so successful, the same concept is let's bring an at-large group together, define what year-round means, define what the restriction looks like, and at what cost, at what AMI makes sense to then participate. The planning board has been very thoughtful in having these discussions. They haven't necessarily mandated, or there's not necessarily they're encouraging it, and that's how some of the conversations are coming to us. That's where the Sparks Ave conversation came to us to say, is there a way to capture these units as year round? So we're trying it. Really, the most effective way to do that is through a deed restriction, buy-in process.
Anybody from the audience? Okay, question. You might want to explain that the AMI changes and how that changes and what it's based on. Oh, God, the man. Yeah, Nantucket versus Boston versus something.
You guys want to explain that?
Yeah.
People ask me all the time. What, where do I fit?
Right.
And how has it changed and what's it based on? So you might want to explain that a little bit.
I'll take a whack at it. But you know, it's a governmental determination of what the area median income is by county. And I believe this is done at the federal level. So Nantucket, as most folks know, is pretty unique. We're both a
town and a county, and therefore we have our own area median income. As the chair just pointed out, it would vary here from what it might be in Barnstable or Boston or any other municipality or area in Massachusetts. Generally, our AMI is fairly high relative to the state, but when you consider that the median home price here last year was $3 million, and you'd have to be earning $590,000 a year in today's interest rate environment to afford the median home, our area median income isn't high enough in that regard. So again, as the chair pointed out, it is set annually, and as a general matter, it goes up over time. Sometimes as the cost of living and interest rate factor into the calculation of AMI, it can go down, but generally speaking, it's on an upward trend over time. Every year.
University of Surfside Crossing, which is in my neighborhood.
Mhm.
Have you had a conversation with those guys about buying down more units? Because I have.
Yeah, absolutely.
As people are aware, the select board this spring voted to drop the lawsuit with regard to Surfside Crossing. And the reasoning behind making that move and that recommendation to the select board was really that the developers themselves have come out and said they see the best version of Surfside Crossing to be 75% year round, perhaps even more. And so with that, we think that's a great goal for that project, and that project can be serving really an unmet need here in terms of home ownership opportunity for year rounders. So we're very much interested, and the program Brian was describing with this deed restriction would apply to the Surfside Crossing location as it would to any other location across the island in terms of deed restriction, buy down permanently within the year-round family.
Okay.
But I think you should have a very concerted effort to go down more of those units.
Yeah, we're interested.
Okay, and before I left the housing trust, my next goal after the closing costs was gap financing and down payment assistance. Because what's happening right now is that a lot of people may qualify, they don't have the down payment, and there's a gap there. Are you guys still talking about that?
So we see the deed restriction program to be used with existing property.
owners and buyers. So a buyer could apply the restriction at the closing, and the funds used to buy the restriction could potentially be used as the down payment on the property. So if we'll have to be working with the bank, and they'll have to have their own equity in it. But if you were competing on a, for example, a $2 million house, as the buyer, the trust could be buying the restriction at the time of the closing, and you could be putting some funds forth that were acceptable to the bank, and then closing on the house, and then the house would be in perpetuity a year-round home at whatever AMI level you bought into.
You're still doing closing costs.
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have the closing cost assistance that we mentioned. More than 75 families have been helped.
Well,
So we have had some conversations with the trust about what you're talking about, and that would be
applied to already deed restricted housing, like covenants. So what Brian's talking about is pulling new properties into the year-round family with the deed restriction.
Market rate.
There's another potential application and there's a lot of debate about down payment assistance in general that needs to be sorted out. But we did have, before I left the trust, have a lengthy conversation about the covenant buyer who doesn't have enough for a down payment. So already create more help than the closing cost assistance, but not on units that are already deed restriction. So that's still a possibility.
So the thing,
Like in the $40,000 range of what we talked about was potentially $1 for dollar match on
Well,
down payment.
so,
Hold on.
Yeah.
yeah, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so.
so the dollar amount's not determined yet. There certainly is the understanding of the need for exactly what you're talking about, Linda. The challenge up until this point is that the $70 million of funding, while it sounds like a lot of money, it was very much either restricted or targeted to meeting the 10% requirement. And therefore, everything that money produces, for the most part, would need to qualify for the subsidized housing inventory. A covenant home doesn't qualify for that. So this recent funding that was approved by town meeting, the $6.5 million permanent override, now we may have the opportunity to really get into the home ownership portion of the market in a way that we never could before. One thing that we do need to understand, and we're working with the finance department and bond counsel, is the ability to bond those funds for the type of purpose that you're talking about. And we don't have the answer on that yet, but that is something that the finance department is looking at.
Trying to get their name drawn
Yeah,
earlier, and I know one of them at least is saving like mad, but will never get
Yep.
the down payment to, even though he qualifies, he may get into an existing covenant unit, which we're building, but he doesn't have the money for the down payment. So that's what I'm worried about. Families that qualify, that get a good number, can't get the 20 grand or whatever it is
Right.
to actually get the down payment.
Yeah.
That's what I worry about. I said, that's just great if somebody has family money or something else and they can get into it because they can afford it, and they got 30 days to prove that they can qualify, that once their name is drawn, that they can actually get the unit.
Yeah.
But they don't have the down payment. That worries me because that X's those people out.
no, and I think a lot of people share your concern, Beth
Ann Meehan, has brought this forward as well, a number of different examples. It is a little bit different level of underwriting, in effect, for the trust than the closing cost assistance program is. But it's very much on the minds of the trust and something that we're working on.
I just
Yeah.
the faster the better.
Yeah, understood. Yeah. We can.
Coming on for home ownership.
Right.
We've got those at my project at Sandpiper. And they get, yay, great, got a number, can I
Right.
get it? So it's the carrot and the stick, and it's very difficult to watch these families, because I've drawn the names on some of these. Get into this predicament and said, oh God, now that I can get a unit, I can't,
Yeah.
where's my down payment coming from?
Well, we've been missing, a longtime member of your team who is also part of our team.
In the housing and real estate office. And we also have been missing an housing office manager for a number of months. But the good news is Ellis Ramos started today in that capacity, and a big hand for Ellis. And we're very excited to have her. So we got a lot on our plates, but we're working hard.
Oh, just so that noted for the record, Diane came in at 10:20. Diane,
Yes, I have been asked, and I'm not sure, and I wanted to sort of back up what I thought.
TV's on mute.
Wait, I'm unmuted.
Okay, here you go.
I am been asked many times in my travels around is how much of this skis, everything is open to everybody off island, on island? Are these all these low-cost housing areas, units? Are they all just for islanders, or does this open them up to off-island applicants also?
All lotteries are open to anyone that qualifies, that wants to apply, regardless of where they live.
That's
Fair housing is important for us to maintain across the community, and so anyone can apply. Any lottery that is open to someone who qualifies financially can apply.
can apply. That's something which some people know. Other people said, oh no, this is all for Nantucketers. So I just wanted, I think it's good to get out that they know that they're, it's open competition, not just solely us.
Talk about local
Yeah,
preference.
so, it's a great question, Diane, and just to add a little more color. So,
Doing a project, say for example, the project at 31 Fairgrounds Road, the 22 unit rental project Wiggles Way, which the trust has been working with Housing Nantucket and Billy Cassidy on developing. That project, 25% of the units will be restricted at 80% AMI, the rest at levels above that. The 80% AMI units and less are all eligible for a local preference, which basically means it guarantees that a minimum of 70% of those go to locals. So in theory, someone from off island could be applying for that other 30% in the local preference, 80% AMI category. The reality is that there are very few applicants that are coming from off island for these opportunities. So if you look at Sachem's Path, for example, a home ownership project that the CPC generously funded the infrastructure for, I believe, anecdotally, there were about 200 applications for the 40 units there across all of the income levels. And my understanding is all but one came from on islanders, and the one application that came from off island was an islander who had been here and left over the housing issue and was trying to return. And it's similar when you talk to Richmond about, for example, their waiting list of 500 households for the rental apartments that they're developing. They would say there are a handful, less than a dozen that are from off island. So the probability of the units going to islanders is extremely high. But as Brian points out, there are fair housing laws that we all have to follow and respect.
Just as an anecdotally of the 40 unit we have at the Housing Authority. And it's almost 40 years next year that the Housing Authority has been in existence over there, as we've gotten the federal program after the local program. Only one family came from off island, and that was at the very, very beginning, in like 1984, 1985. And because we are a state entity and we have a federal component, we have to, when we have the waiting list, we have to take everybody from anywhere that wants to come here on that list. And then we move up, people get qualified and are thrown off the list every year, but only one time has there been a family in there and they're no longer there. So it's all local, come from off island. And that's a long time to have all local people in a housing authority in this state. So it just doesn't really happen. Tom?
It is important for me just to say this, that if somebody does have the opportunity to move here and have safe, stable, year-round, secure housing, then they do become local and they do participate in our community with jobs and schools and other things. So, safe, secure, stable housing is the goal. And I don't believe that a lot of people are traveling to Nantucket looking for housing because we have a significant housing problem. So I want to say that.
Tom,
Yeah, I was just echo what you said, Linda, which was on my 6 years on the Habitat for Humanity Nantucket board. We had one app in all the houses that we built during that period, which was significant for Habitat. We had one applicant from off island and they had also moved off and were trying to come back because they lost housing. And I just wanted to just echo kind of what Tucker said. After working for the legislature for a while, the whole SHI list conversation is tough because getting the state to count housing arrangements like covenant houses.
Habitat. Took a
And,
while to get Habitat.
yeah,
going.
and previous Habitat houses that weren't certified by an official lottery and all those things. Tucker has worked, Tucker and Brooke and Beth Ann and Ann Cospa have worked very hard to try and lobby's not the right word, but to talk to Senator Sear and Rep Fernandez and try and get those units counted. It's very difficult for the legislature to give a unique carve out to one municipality. It just doesn't really work that way, unfortunately. And Nantucket is so far an outlier with our housing prices and there's no available rentals, et cetera, that it's really unfortunate that the legislature doesn't see that and say, oh, Nantucket's, special case. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. But I really commend Tucker and Beth Ann and Brooke for all their work on trying to move that for like nearly a decade now. So, and Brian too.
Any other questions for anybody? Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you very much. And I just want to mention one thing, as the members know, there also is a major effort, has been for several years to get a transfer fee passed at the State House to benefit housing. And one of the important selling points, and probably ultimately is going to be part of the requirement to access a transfer fee for a municipality, is the fact that we have a CPC. We're at the highest level that you can be. That is a major feather in Nantucket's cap and an important selling point to the legislature on this. So, I just want to express my own personal appreciation for the CPC, what it's done over time, y'all's leadership. You've made a tremendous difference in this community. And we were unaware of this signage requirement. So if there is a sign that we can be putting up, for example, at 31 Fairgrounds Road or Sachem's Path, we would love and be honored to do that. So thank you.
Send us the template.
Yeah.
Yes, Brooke.
Grant recipients, because I've got a couple buildings that need them.
Oh, yeah,
At the church.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's Congo.
It would be great if we could find a source and make it really easy for people to order these signs that are approved by maybe we can all go to the sign advisory committee together. Here's a standard.
Yeah, good luck.
sign.
No, they're less than what they get any control over. These
Oh,
signs are-
okay, so we
Even
should
better.
still do it.
Yeah, we got the template, but I'll look at the template again. We'll have to
Template.
revisit.
But sourcing someone to make them would be amazing too.
Yeah,
Like,
we have a good guy. He needs to-
yeah, great.
And also I did some years ago when I was trying to get money to the trust. From the CPC, because back in the day, there was a lot of resistance from the CPC giving money to the trust, because remember, it was open-ended and all this other stuff. I had to battle that because I was on both. And I did a research project of every single CPC in the state. Commingled that with every single one that had a housing trust of some sort in every one of those towns that had a CPC. And we by far gave the most money of any CPC in the state. But what I did find is a very symbiotic relationship between the trusts and the CPCs in every single town that had both. And sometimes the sole funding was coming out of the CPC. But years ago, when I couldn't quite get enough money, we came up with a bonding issue.
And that's how you ended up with those bonds, because I just like light bulb went on, I went to Brian, he said, yeah, you can bond. I said, well, the CPCs can bond under the legislative act. So why are we not bonding? So that's how that all started, and then it snowballed. Then
That's where
town
the chart,
meeting
that's where the
supported
chart went up like
it, went
this.
up like that.
Yeah.
Because then the town meeting supported it, and then everybody else started supporting.
I mean, we don't realize it, like when you're here every day and sort of living it and so forth, but when we go to the State House and are talking about the transfer fee and using the example of what the CPC has done in the two $5 million bondings, I mean, we're fortunate to have involved in this effort the former Secretary of Housing and Community Development in the Deval Patrick administration, who lives full time on the vineyard, and he's a
Huge advocate and working diligently to get this done. He's impressed with what our CPC and Nantucket has done. I don't think that we realize, again, living it every day, the kind of, I'm going to use the word incredible example that Nantucket sets, like, for the Commonwealth. So again, I'm very appreciative of the work you guys do.
Well, I'm glad that the bonds have taken hold, all the other money has come in, because it takes the pressure off the CPC now. So you guys, Habitat, et cetera, et cetera. The Housing Authority continues to come directly to the CPC. So that's,
Yeah.
they don't really want to go through the trust. They just come to the CPC for rehab of all of our units, because now we're starting to rehab the 1984 units, which are in desperate need of it.
Yeah.
But you guys have taken over all the other parts of it, and I think our money is very well spent with you guys.
Thank you.
I don't think that the different housing organizations have ever worked better together than they do today. And I think that has been made possible by this central funding approach that the CPC really initiated with the first $5 million bond.
Well, I think it is good. People don't realize the symbiotic relationship between Housing Nantucket, Housing Authority. They always confuse the two. Habitat, you guys, various other entities, Billy Cassidy, things like that. I think it really works. We're all going in the same direction.
Exactly.
In the
Yeah.
same
Same boat rowing,
In the same boat.
same boat rowing,
Yeah.
one direction. Well,
thanks,
thank you for
guys.
having us.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Kathy Ward.
Yes.
For the hospital thrift shop, which is an historic building that we always require public access on all of our projects. I don't think you can get any more public access than people lined up down the road trying to get into the building.
Now, we have to limit the number of people who can come through there at one particular point in time, but I'll just ask her to put them up. So mine is not quite as exciting as what Tucker and Ryan just did, because they do an incredible job, and I think you guys are to be appreciated for what they do. I just heard all of that. I mean, the amazing job that they have done. It goes with that question. I mean, who knew that all this was going on? I knew a little bit of it, but not that much. So I just want to give you guys actually a pictorial walk through what you've done and helped us with. So this house was built in 1792. And it was a resident of Timothy Horsfield, who was a tin plate maker. And he's had, there were several different owners of this house through the years. And then finally, in 1945, the leaders of the hospital thrift shop board of directors at the time bought this house for $3,000. We paid 5.5% interest. So that's what it is today. And we had 3 years to pay it off. So, I mean, it was a big thing when our first gifts after 1929, when we started, was $600 to the hospital. So, I mean, we've come a long way, and we couldn't do it or have that building, I don't think, without the confidence that this group has given us. Because, excuse me, when I first started meeting with Linda and with Ken Bogran and Neville, we got in touch with Michael May. at the Preservation Trust. And he put us in contact with the right people, because as a group of women, we really didn't know what to do. We had been burned a couple of times on people doing restoration on the building. But with your support and the confidence you guys gave us, we were able to move forward, and you're going to see what you've done, just a few pictures of what you've done. So we do have a deed restriction on this building now, and it's held at the Preservation Trust. So next slide, please, Glenn. So this is just a view from across the street, so you can go to the next slide. So just kind of a little bit of a picture of who we are. This is where we are today. We are very appreciative. I can't even say thank you enough, because we've learned a lot about the building. We constantly go through the building. We have no new holes without Kathy Ward's approval. So nobody gets to do anything to this building unless it is approved, because we do want to maintain it. And as Linda said, it's open. We're open from mid-May until mid-October. We have, hours that are conducive to the community. I mean, our mission is to make affordable goods available to the community and support the needs of the hospital, which benefits the entire community. There's one night a week that we're open, so to accommodate workers. So next slide, please. So how we knew about CPC. So I was sitting at the town meeting in 2014 and heard the grants as they were approved, and hearing what they were for, and thinking that we had a historic building downtown, and we didn't know what to do. We really didn't know how to do it. And like I said, we had, been snookered by some other folks. And so we have, carried on since 2014. We started in 2015 with our work that we did. Next slide, please. So we met with the Preservation Trust, and as I said, they put us in touch with the guys from the North Bennett Street School, with Michael Gall, Matt Anderson, and just a whole crew, and Brian Pfeiffer, who actually did the analysis. He had engineers come in, and you're going to see some pictures of how bad it really was, and it probably was dangerous at the time. Now it's safe and sound. And we received a grant in 2015. And since then, we have received, if you total up the one that hopefully is going to be a check written to us soon, or that we'll get notification of, it's about $250,000 in total. So we've come to you when we needed help. We try to be good stewards of the money that you afforded us, and we get some surprises along the way, but I think that's what happens even in a new house. So next slide, please. So each year we put aside our own money. So one of the questions that was asked of us early on, what are you willing to put? Are you willing to put some skin in the game to work with us on this? And we do. So we put money in the budget every year. And the first year we started just stabilizing this building. It was moving, it was shaking, it was bouncing. And when you have, 100 people in that building at one time, it truly was an unsafe place to be. Now it's a safe place. In this last year, you're going to see that we had two projects that we are very proud of that you'll see. We are going to host also the Preservation Trust. It's going to do a tour through there during their feet. They want to see what we've done. We got an award from them after the second year of getting grants from the CPC, which we were very pleased to get. So next year, we'll do it again. So next slide, please. Okay, so we didn't understand how bad water can be. It's the enemy. And this whole building had been damaged by water in every feasible place. We've had to put a steel beam in. The second floor actually bounced when you stood on it, when you stood to pay on this. And now you go in there and you would never know it was there. It was done professionally, and that steel beam is there, not seen it in any way. So it doesn't take away from the history, of the building. We found that we had cloth electrical wiring. I mean, just get one spark and we were gone. With building electrical fire. And then we added this loading dock in the back, because the way our front is situated is you have to go up the front steps and then go in, and if you're going down to the basement, you have to go down. If you come from the back, you had to go up steps and come down. So now we've made this load dock, which was approved by NPT, who has the deed restriction, and also by the HDC. So you're gonna see a few pictures now. Okay, so the next slide, please. So you can see, you have to look over to the side, and you see how that wall is bowing out. So that is our east wall, and it was moving away from the building. It had buckled itself off of the foundation, the rubble foundation. Next slide, please. So these are the guys. This is the North Bennett Street School guys, and they did it the old fashioned way with a little block and tackling. They pulled the foundation out. They pushed the wall in, put the steel beam in to secure it, put in a new seal. So this was, and Michael Galt, as most of you know, was involved with this as well. Next slide, please. Here they're putting a pole up. There was no connection between the first floor and the basement, no support. And when you talk about bouncing, there was a pole that came from the second floor to the first floor that connected to nothing. And so, like I said, I mean, we're very fortunate that everybody made it in and out of that building safely. So now they do. Next slide. This is what they did to the rubble foundation. They had to pull it apart, and Penn Austin did the work there. Next slide. That's just another picture of how from the outside. I mean, they did it right by pulling down what needed to be pulled down and pushing the building back into place. Next slide. And this is the project that I talked about with a loading dock, where you had to go down the stairs, across the backyard, up the stairs to get in the back door. Next slide. And now this is connected. It's just a bridge that connects. It's movable. The Preservation Trust, like I said, who holds the deed restriction, wanted it to be something that we could take down if they ever felt we needed to. But it is so much easier to bring stuff in that back door than it ever was before, and less dangerous, actually. Next slide. That's just another view of it. We didn't have to do anything but put that bridge up, because both those landings were about the same. That's from the Hussey Street area where we have a parking lot. Next slide. These are the floors that are going to be on display, if you will, in the Preservation Trust FET this year. These are the original floors in that house that were built in 1792. They're about close to 18 inches wide. They're fabulous, absolutely fabulous. Next slide. And this is just how things were pulling away from the building that you saw earlier. This window has the original glass in it, and Michael's been able to build a new frame around it. Next slide. This is part of the rubble foundation that is going to be worked on this year. You can see the damage from coming in through the bulkhead. Next slide. Here again, damage to the foundation that we continuously work on. We pulled all of that vegetation out and had drainage put in with a grant from you guys. They fixed the foundation and put the drainage for about a foot out with pebbles, and then moved that water away from the building. And now it's got hosta plants back there that are just beautiful. So that's taking care of itself. Next slide. And this is a view now of what it looks like back there. Thank you. Next slide. And then this is under what we call the men's clothing area. The floor was bouncy there, and Michael came in and took some old support beams in other places that he had been working and put them under there. So it's old beams, but new structure to support that men's clothing area. Next slide. And here again, this is that support that I spoke about. You can see the new wiring that we have down there too. Next slide. This is up in the attic, and we'd had some questions about whether it's secure up there. We've had an engineer take a look at it. Everything is like it should be, and so we are fully confident that the attic is in good shape. Next slide. And this is, again, Michael Galt had, we had Michael Galt and Michael Stefanik pull everything away from the building and put a drainage on this east side of the building as well. And then now we have a dry well under there, so all the water off the house runs into that dry well. Next slide. And here's just an example of some of the cloth wiring and the bulbs that were hanging down. Yeah, next slide.
That's a copper ceiling, isn't it?
I don't know if it's, it may be tin, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And just that's more of the wiring. Next slide. So we've rectified all of that wiring. Sally Bates did a great job. Next slide. And then this was a biggie.
Yeah.
The floor didn't exactly sit on the concrete blocks. And so Michael came in and he put shims under there to secure the, that's the third addition to that house. There's the main house, two, what he called L's, and then there are two sheds. This is under the shed part of the building. Next slide. And this is the upstairs before some of the, I just showed you those beautiful floors. This is what they looked like before Rudy Valencia started working on it. We've got a great team of people that we call when we need work. Next slide. And that's another view of what the floors look like. So we welcome any of you to come in and see, you know, what we've done to this building to make it something that we're all proud of. Next slide. And oh, I guess I left myself a note on there, double click to edit. So that's the way they patched the floors up in the attic. It's with some tin, and we've had an engineer come in and everything is very safe. So next slide. Okay, so here is our statement to you. We just feel that we've been good stewards of your money. We've been very appreciative of what you've done. And I think the confidence that you've given us is key to everything here. It's confidence that we know that if we need even a reference to somebody who might do the work, you guys would give it to us and help us along that. So we just look forward to having people tour it in an organized manner, not just shopping. We'd love you to come in and shop anytime. But next slide, please. And there we are. It takes all of these volunteers. It takes about 100 slots a week that Mary has to fill. And we're very appreciative of our volunteers. We're appreciative of everything that they do and of what we're able to do for the hospital that helps us all. So thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions or tell you again, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from anybody?
Okay, well, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How big was your check this year to the hospital?
Last year, the check was $600,000. We bought the new MRI machine over 2 years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have a new experience. For
I
you.
knew that, but I wanted it on the record.
Well, thank you for asking. And, you know, we couldn't do it if we didn't have a safe building.
Yeah.
So you're part of it.
I
Thank
love that
you.
MRI machine taking lots of naps.
I remember before we gave them the money the first time, I went over with the building with Kathy, and I remember going to the back of the building and I'm going, oh my God. It's like having a hoarder on top of no foundation, no supports. The piers weren't I mentioned to you, the piers weren't sitting under the sill, and it was like going, oh my God. Normally, we've had other requests in the past for historic structures, not involved in the NHA or any other 501c3. And we haven't approved those funds because there wasn't any public access. There was just like, oh, I can drive by and it's a great building, it's historic, we're gonna you know, put it back together and all this stuff. So we can just drive down the street. Now, technically, funds are allowed for that, but the CPC has always required public access.
Right.
Which was a major driving force for giving you the money, as the just sheer public access to that
Yeah.
building, let alone the fact that it's on India Street. You know, it's one of the premier streets for historic structures. One of the oldest structures in town is across the street, the Gambrel.
Mhm.
And we just said, we felt that this was a great expenditure of funds to preserve that building and keep it safe for the people coming in the building. So we were very appreciative. And at the time, we said that your group was perfect stewards of that structure. So we very much appreciate what you've done for it and how you
Thank you.
continue to upgrade it.
Well, thank you. We will always be good stewards of your money and your thoughts, and we appreciate the confidence that you give us.
And you didn't come back every year. You came
We
back.
don't. We come
some
back when we need
every
you.
year. You came back when you needed the funding.
That's right.
So we appreciate your diligence.
Thank you.
When you need something, you come.
Thank you. Thank you for support.
Do you have any, what's going on in the future? What's the next part of this?
Pam and I will be doing along with Mary, Casey we usually do a walkthrough in July or August to get ready to see what we need. We have some projects. You saw the projects with the loading dock and also some of that foundation. Those are projects that this grant that you just gave us will be paying for.
Okay.
And also to refinish those floors, to get that paint off of them, get them down to what the original floors were. So I know that there are a couple of other projects with some squishy floor going into what would have been a pantry. And then also to bring the floors in that front room up to what they were. So
So you're gonna be coming back in the fall?
probably,
Okay.
but you know, if it's something that we feel that we can afford to do by ourselves, we'll do it. We're not gonna come back to you for $2,000, $5,000. We'll come back to you when we need substantial support.
Well, that was the other thing that came up at the very beginning, was you guys establishing a maintenance fund. Which you then
We do.
did establish a maintenance fund at our request,
Yes,
just so you can, take care of these $2,000, $3,000
Yes.
problems. But never hesitate to come back.
and we always share the expense of whatever project we do. We put some of our money into it. As you'll always see on the forms that I fill out, there's a portion, so if the bill is $1,000, then I'll pull out 400 and say, the thrift shop does this and CBC does that. So we try to share. Yes.
Kathy, have you ever considered being open later than October?
We don't have any heat in the building, and when we
That's what I
work,
thought.
and we don't have
It's
the
pretty darn cold.
volunteers. Because the majority of our volunteers are summer
People.
residents. And so,
Hi, I'm sorry, we didn't mean to interrupt, but we came to hopefully talk to someone in the health district about.
Next building.
so Tom, our volunteers most of them are gone, but we do work probably a couple of weekends a month. For a couple of hours with hats, mittens, long underwear, everything to collect donations during the winter and, get it organized. So we are open for donations, but not for retail. We just don't have the people or the heat.
I can just say, as I work for the Interfaith Council, who has the food pantry. We have lots of volunteers in the winter. And the heat is definitely a barrier, but I bet you could get enough volunteers in the winter if you ever wanted to do that. But total aside.
Sounds like a CPC
Thank you. We'll
project.
consider that. Pam's president of the board and she just heard your comment, but thank you.
HVAC system next up.
Yeah, heat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
and we'll put the sign up as soon as you guys get the.
Yeah,
sign.
we love the template.
Okay. Well, I just want the
We have
words
to have
changed.
recognition in our hallway of NPT.
Yes,
and the
I've seen that.
CPC. So you are recognized, everybody, you'll not passing in such a hurry.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I want to bring that template back up next month so everybody can actually see it. If there's any changes people want to make to it.
I'll send it out.
It's kind of bland, but there it is. Introducing Posey Constable, the Managing Director of Sustainable Nantucket's, the farms on Hummock Pond Road.
I have a slideshow presentation that is entirely pictures. Because I can't read the text from there, but I can read it from here. So I'm honored to be here representing Sustainable Nantucket to Community Preservation Committee. Ever since the founding of the Sustainable Nantucket Farm at 168 Hummock Pond Road in 2015, we've been a grateful recipient of CPC funding to help us establish infrastructure required by our farmers. Now, CPC is not the only source we go to for infrastructure. It includes the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources and other funders, but the primary funders from the beginning has been CPC. We have taken advantage of CPC funding in the realm of its mission that encompasses open space. But we also feel that in addition to open space and recreation, we serve the purposes of historic preservation, and in our wildest dreams, if we could ever get some sort of funding for affordable housing for a mentor farmer, that would fulfill a dream. First, open space. In 2010, we began building our community agriculture program, which is designed to increase the production of local food on the island. The program encourages the preservation of open agricultural space on the island by creating job opportunities in the profession of sustainable agriculture and elevating awareness regarding the importance of sustainable agriculture. As a 501c3 organization that has dedicated itself to increasing agriculture on Nantucket, we embrace the initial 2 acres we received in a license from the Nantucket Land Bank towards an incubator farm to help new farmers learn the craft of growing and marketing what they grow. The Walter F. Ballinger Community Farm Institute was founded through a fundraising campaign in 2014. With the land grant from the Land Bank, we applied to CPC for infrastructure to get this program off the ground. We built deer fencing, we installed 2 wells and irrigation, we procured electricity to manage plug load and operate the pumps, and we built a storage shed and an initial heated hoop house. Our program to teach new growers was actively engaged in outreach to attract potential new farmers. And with the help of volunteers and a dedicated mentored farmer at the time, the program was launched. Project goals were to minimize barriers to entry for aspiring and beginning farmers, and that includes land, infrastructure, tools, utilities, and knowledge. We wanted to increase the number of farmers while providing greater access to locally grown food and educational opportunities in agriculture to the community, thereby strengthening the local economy and revitalizing our traditional industry of agriculture. We wanted to provide markets. Participants can sell their produce at the Sustainable Nantucket Farmers and Artisans Market and also at our 24/7 honor-based farm stand. We also help participants find restaurant and other sales outlets for their produce. Finally, we provide community workshops, teaching about seed starts, growing tomatoes, raising ducks, value-added products from locally grown produce, and flower farming for market. These are just some of the workshops we've had in the past 2 years. Recreation. With a nod towards education, we host farm tours and family-friendly events in partnership with our Farm to School program. Throughout the summer, campers from other island not-for-profits, including Act Ventures at Nantucket Community School, the Boys and Girls Club, Mariah Mitchell, the Murray Camp, and STAR. We also host the Green Crab Fertilizer event, which was a partnership of the Land Council and Mariah Mitchell. Participants get to learn about green crabs and squish them underfoot before adding vinegar and water to make fertilizer. So in the realm of historic resources and culture on the island, we preserve the historic use and scenic aesthetic view of a portion of the Pease Gardner property that has been in agricultural use for over 100 years, also known as Mount Vernon Farm. Agriculture is a traditional industry on Nantucket, and in 1850, there were over 100 farms on Nantucket. In 1950, there were approximately 30. When we started the Sustainable Nantucket Farmers and Artisans Market in 2007, there were only 3 commercial growers on the island. That included Bartlett's Farm, Moores End Farm, and the Cranberry Bogs. Now in 2023, farms include the same, Bartlett's, Moores End. Now we have Harvest Garden, Berry Patch Farm, Pumpkin Pond Farm, Secret Farm, My Grandfather's Farm, and the 3 professional farmers and 2 mentored farmers that are on the Sustainable Nantucket land. And just so that you recognize them, that's Washashore, Fogtown, and Eat Fire Farms. The Land Bank is actively involved in making more farmland available to qualified farmers, and SN is here to help. On the topic of affordable housing, oh, wouldn't we jump for joy if we could find a house for a new employee that we'd like to hire that could serve as our mentor farm manager and also teach a series of sustainable agricultural class to the high schoolers at NPS. We had 25 students signed up last fall to take our inaugural class and actively tried to recruit a program manager teacher but couldn't overcome the housing problem with our smallish budget for salary. Preserving land has been a mission that has been accomplished successfully by our island's visionary organizations, such as the Land Bank, the Land Council, Nantucket Conservation Foundation, Linda Laurie Nature Foundation, Mass Audubon, and others, such that we now have over 50% of our landmass held in conservation in perpetuity. What an amazing goal. If only some of that land could also have kept a house or two on it for stewards of the land, as the Land Bank did at 19 Wawinnet at Fire Spring to house a farmer. Well, back to how we've deployed CPC funds over the years. So far, we've included a hardened parking lot and road that stretches to the back of the farm to access the additional 6 acres granted by the Land Bank in 2016. A viewing area and bench along Hummock Pond Road, an educational pollinator and pick your own garden area, deer fencing around the perimeter area of the back 6, and more irrigation to aid cultivation. We've expanded electricity to our 3 solar arrays and 4 cold storage units scattered around the property. We winterized our pump house that manages the well and pumps. We built out the wash station where farmers prepare produce for market. We've added additional spin and wash stations. We funded the construction of our farm stand education building, and we purchased a 10 by 20 structure that serves as storage and honey extraction for our mentor bee program. I believe we've received roughly 450,000 over the years from CPC, and the community has been the biggest beneficiary. So with regards to relevance to the community, what Sustainable Nantucket is all about is increasing access to fresh, local, sustainably grown food. Nantucket's history is filled with farming, but currently there is little evidence of that except for the many roads and conservation areas named after the farms that used to be there. As a community, we've done a wonderful job of preserving the historic buildings on the island and keeping history alive in the present time. We can do the same with agriculture. As growers graduate from the Community Farm Institute and lease larger parcels elsewhere on the island, we'll start to see more and more small farms cropping up over time. To some extent, the agricultural past will become the present again. Incubator farms are a way to provide opportunities for people who would like to become farmers. When I look at the graduating classes each year from Nantucket Public School, and for those that have as their category of what they're doing next, working, I want some of those to be farmers. It's important to develop a diversified economy that can provide occupational opportunities that are economically feasible and independent of tourism. A strong local food movement encourages a strong connection to the land and people and helps to create and sustain a unique community character. Our school children have been learning this for years in their lessons at the farm school program at NPS. Local food from the farm not only provides job opportunities working on the land, but also helps to keep local dollars circulating in our economy. Instead of money spent on fresh produce going to chain stores and international companies, we can keep that money here on the island. And we also like to put a nod to the environmental benefits of not having all that produce shipped or trucked or coming by rail to a place where it's then stuck in a warehouse for days, weeks, and finally gets to Nantucket. We can get it fresh at the farm stand. In short, Sustainable Nantucket is extremely grateful to CPC for the trust you bestowed on our organization to make a difference in the lives of community members through our agricultural initiatives. And I would love to take your questions, and I hope you enjoyed our pictures.
I love the geese and the tent at Christmas.
Yeah, the 10 of Christmas. Explain more about the bees.
The bees, we started a mentor beekeeping program and I don't remember, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Currently, Peter Brace is our mentor program manager. The shed that we installed is 10 by 20, and in it we have storage for tools, beekeeping clothing, and protective gear. Also our extractor. So we run an electrical cord in there. There are tables, posters to help educate people about beekeeping. And we have 4 mentored beekeepers on the property at current. We had them, all the beehives in one area at one point, but they were becoming a menace to the farmers who were minding their own business in the fields, and bees just sort of fly and whatever direction they're going, seeking water or food. And if your face happens to get in the way, it's gonna become a target. They don't mean to sting you, but they will. So we have spread the hives around the farm in different areas, and the load in the one area along the roadway is much less.
Now, that's the thing that I see, you know, when you go to the county fair in the fall, there are like 10 different people with 10 different honeys. From your place, from Peter's place, from Jim's place, from this, and it depends on what I learned a whole thing about that from you.
Well,
Depends
there
on
are
what they're
60
eating as to what
beekeepers
they
on the
taste
island.
like. Yeah, 60 beekeepers here. It's amazing.
We had a honey tasting event at the Daffodil Parade in front of the church, Peter and I, and we gave people opportunities to sample spring honey and fall honey from hives from different parts of the island, and it's amazing what the differences are. It's sort of floral, chewy color,
Big
all sorts of
difference.
stuff. Yeah,
My brother used I think Peter's honey because the dogs were allergic.
yeah.
And if they're allergic to a certain thing and it's in the honey and that's what
It
they're
does
allergic to,
benefit.
it benefits the dogs. It's like,
Linda, can others ask questions?
yeah, go ahead. Mark.
Is the back 6 acres now under cultivation?
The back 6, we initially received roughly 5.5 in 2016. And then 2 years ago, we realized that we hadn't asked for the final acre. So Land Bank was kind enough to allow us to sort of rejigger the configuration. And Fogtown Farm has that entirely under production.
Oh,
Yeah, and also, I think it's important to note that, Eleanor, you can help me here. I think there were roughly 8.5 or 9 acres that surrounded us that were the remnants of the Mount Vernon farm that had gone out for RFP through the land bank in May. And there was a consortium of local farmers that wanted to manage that whole property as a unit, if you will, and asked us not to put in a bid to expand our own footprint. So that consortium includes Dan Southey from Washashore, Dylan Wallace from Eat Fire Farm, Aidan Feeney from Fogtown Farm, and Dean Long from Secret Farm. So they have crafted up a way that they're going to utilize that entirety. And so the farm belt continues. That whole area is I'm very excited about it. You know, too bad for Moore's End, but for the people who are out of the other end of the island, they have access to great food out there as well. But we've just got this aggregate of farmland that is under cultivation. It's really cool.
So do you have 10 acres total for you?
We have a total of 8 acres. We're just shy of.
Right.
And raise a hand, who has not come on a farm tour out there? Glenn has been, oh, Brooke, please come.
Take the kids.
It's kind of cool.
We will,
Yep.
now that I know about it.
Give a call and I will be happy to join you sometime in August. This month is lights out for me.
Any other questions?
Well, we thank CPC for all the help and support we've gotten. Amazing things have been done with your funding. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. And never hesitate to come back. Okay,
We have the closing remarks from Ken be recorded.
okay, we do have a closing video from our dear leader, Ken. So it's time to run that now.
I want to thank the 3 presenters for very interesting presentations. What's really important is for us to understand the very, very many different and really truly different ways that through the CPC we provide benefit and help to all different aspects of our community.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay,
Move to adjourn.
second, wait, hang on a second.
Just one thing, in speaking with Ken and working with him over the last month. One of the things that we've decided to do this year, which is different, but in other counties, they're accepting applications online. So the initial application, anyone who wants to submit an application where this is a trial, we're trying it this year. You can submit that initial application to me at Verizon.net or at nantucket.cpc@verizon.net. And then from that point, I will review it, make sure all of the pieces are there, stamp it, and then make arrangements
to get the other copies to the office along with the thumb drive.
And that'll be on our website, will that information be on the website?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Good idea, Glenn.
So Glenn, the idea would be, for instance, if the initial application was missing something, that someone can go through the trouble of doing the 11 bound copies. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Much better for everybody.
Well, those bags get pretty heavy at September.
Yeah. Having just completed a grant from Mass Department of Agriculture that was awarded October 22nd, and all the funds had to be spent by June 30 and the report due on July 15. And any grant requests in the open period are timestamped, and if you don't get it in by the minute of the timestamp, you're out. And it has to be complete. And it's not, you can't apply for funding, as you spend it, you have to do it all at once. And I nearly had a heart attack yesterday. I got in the new grant report and I submitted it at 2 o'clock on the nose at the deadline. And I didn't get the confirm for 4 minutes. I thought I was gonna really slow.
We're not that strict, are we?
Well, we are.
Pretty strict.
We are.
We are.
September 8th at 4.
Yeah, September 8th.
By 4, yeah, yeah.
But the preliminary can be submitted anytime from now until
Yes,
then.
from
Yeah.
now all the
Up
way
until.
until September 8th.
Yeah, and they don't have to have all the material in by September 8th if they do the preliminary now, or does everything have to be in the office by the 8th?
Once I receive the preliminary and review, make sure all the pieces are there, we will have to have all of those copies bound into the office by September 8th, because then we have to disperse them to the commissioners.
Is it a good idea to submit a preliminary so that we can get your feedback
I think
or?
so, of course.
Sure.
yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that was an option. Okay.
We'll look at it.
Okay.
I've got like 10 historic stuff coming in already. It's a question of getting it put together by the people that want to do it. So it's good to sort of,
The answer is
get
yes.
rolling now.
Okay. Great.
Yeah,
And also, if you go to the town website under the CPC tab, you'll find a welcome letter as well as RFP that gives you all the information on what you need to submit the application.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're
We've
welcome.
spoken on the phone. I'm Ann Doherty.
I did.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too.
Madam Chair.
Yep.
I'm here, obviously as housing advocate, but I'm also here wearing my First Congregational Church hat. And I just really wanted to express my appreciation at CPC for the support for the church over the years. And let you know that our Bennett Hall project is coming almost to completion. And the thing that really struck me when the folks from the hospital were talking is the access to resources. The preservation easement is such a great tool because NPT holding that gives us access to people and expertise that has been critical for us at the church to understand our buildings and to be managing in them and restoring them properly. And I think it's a really important thing to reiterate that on the preservation side, having those easements in place is both beneficial to the community, but it's also beneficial to the organization in terms of having those parameters on how to do things properly, because there's been a lot of rehab on buildings over the years that have, that may or may not have been done super well. So we just really appreciate all of that. And I'm excited about the idea of finding a vendor for the signs so that we can all get up.
Is that the same as a historic determination?
no,
No, it's a preservation
no, historic
easement.
determination comes through the HDC.
Okay.
And
That's
I
a
can
whole
talk to you
different
about
thing.
it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, whole separate thing.
Okay.
So Brooke, can we recruit you for next year's annual public forum?
I would love to speak
Okay.
at next year's annual public
Okay.
forum about everything that's gone on up on Beacon Hill in the last,
Thank you.
7 years.
You also wanted to reallocate at some point.
Yes,
So you
and-
did talk to Glenn about getting back on the agenda.
yeah, and we actually came in under budget on our Old North Vestry project. And the other thing that was the no holes without permission.
Yeah.
We have a lot of groups that use our buildings and I have a no holes without talking to Brooke policy at the congregational church too. Like, you cannot put anything in the wall. Without talking to someone. We're just super protective of the investment the community's made in our buildings.
So the
thank
history of that building is pretty intriguing.
Yeah. And if you haven't been into the Old North Vestry lately to see what y'all funded, it's spectacular, really spectacular.
Well, we've done all the Trump loyals in both churches, Unitarian and the Congo, and they're just spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. All right, any other comments?
Next meeting, August 15th,
Yeah,
via Zoom.
Yes.
Okay.
this is about the only meeting late in the last 3 years we've had in person. It's been the annual. At some point, maybe we'll go back.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody want to do,
Right,
Mark,
nice
did you
seeing
make
you
one?
on- nice seeing you on camera there, Linda.
Hey, it's the only time you are gonna see it.
Yeah, really.
Did,
Black.
you made a motion to adjourn, didn't
I
you?
did.
Was there a second? I thought Eleanor seconded.
I can second again.
Okay, all those in favor, Eleanor?
Aye.
Aye.
Diane, Tom,
Eyes over.
myself, Joe.
Aye.
Okay,
Brooke.
thank you, everybody.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
You can do this, yeah.
Thanks, man.